Stephen, welcome to Locked In. Thank you to your wife for setting this all up.
Yeah.
And this is the power of checking your DMs, because she DM'd me on TikTok and I read it, and she wrote like this whole thing, and I read it. I was like, what? Like,
really?
Yeah,
Cool.
It was like 3 paragraphs long. And then I Google you, and then I read the whole Wikipedia page. And then I was just shocked you've never really like sat down and did this type of thing before.
No, I appreciate that, and thanks for having me. This is awesome. Yeah, she's pretty amazing. I told her a while back, I was like, if you ever have some extra time, you should check into these things. But that had gone by, and she gets into her stuff, and she gets busy too, and she takes care of our family, and so she's pretty busy. But she said, "Have you heard of Ian Bick and his Locked In podcast?" And I was like, I don't really have a lot of time for podcasts. She was like, you got to listen to it. And so we took a trip, and that's all we listened to from there back. And she was like, beforehand, she was like, I really like this guy. You could tell that he cares. You could tell that he's really been there, and that like, this is really important to him, and sharing people's stories is really important to him. And I was like, so then we listened to it, and I was like, man, this is pretty neat. Left it, right? And then I got back into whatever it was I was doing. And then she was like, you remember Ian Bick? And I told you. And she was like, oh, super excited. Like, she still loves the celebrity thing. And it was just a really big deal to her that you got back to her. And I still, I always wait until it's done before I get, excited about anything. That's just how it goes, right? But I'm still really excited. So thanks so much, man. She did a great job, but thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited for the audience to hear your story.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, I want you to tell us about the tea company you have what
thanks.
it does, and plug that in.
Yeah. So Generosity, it is an iced tea, a 20-ounce iced tea. And each flavor has an assigned charity. And so every time you purchase it, 10 cents, it's right on the front of the bottle, goes to that charity. So for the last few years when we started, we've been around for about 3 years. Our sweet tea benefits the Humane Society. Our raspberry tea benefits the National Breast Cancer Foundation. And then our green tea is Operation Homefront, military families. So every time you buy it, it's 10 cents. And, some people may not think that 10 cents is a lot, but it is a lot. And it adds up. And it's a lot of our margin, or my margin. And so it makes it kind of tough to make a lot of money on, but that wasn't really the goal, is helping people. I've seen these organizations and what they do to help people. And so we've had it in Walmart, like all of California Walmarts. This year we're growing, hopefully like into Kroger and maybe Dollar General and some other places this year. But we're kind of at we started off with a very small amount of money. And the fact that we're where we're at is nuts. There's no way we should be this far along when you're up against Coca-Cola and Pepsi and I don't like to say up against or them being my competitors, but in the world of business, that everybody is, it is a competition, but, not for me. I just want to, make a difference.
Yeah. And can people buy online too, or?
That's tough. So we tried to do the whole Amazon thing and Shopify, and it's heavy, right? So you lose everything there. So it's kind of been a loser working on that. And then Amazon, unless you're Coke or Pepsi, doesn't really want to work with you on that packaging price and the shipping. So we're still trying to navigate around that, man. And I mean, if anybody's listening that knows, reach out, because I could surely use the help there, but I would love to.
Yeah, the shipping's tough. I just shipped 2 cases of the Woo Energy to a couple friends, and it was $25-$30 each.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's tough. These are a 12-pack. Minimum, it's going to be $12 to ship it. Average is about $16. And that's, I mean, dude, you've got to sell it for way too much. And I'm not trying to make it like a bunch of money on it. I just, keep it going and help these charities. But it's really tough in the shipping. So we have to get it in more stores.
Yeah, I guess the Amazon Connect is key, because I'll order cases of water for here and I look for the deals and I can get a 24 pack for like $12, free shipping. You can't beat
serious.
that.
No, man, not unless you're going to Walmart yourself. That's pretty serious.
Yeah. Every day they have like a new water featured on Amazon. That's like the hack.
That's great. I want to be their new tea featured.
Awesome. Well, we'll have the link and like everything for your stuff in the
Cool.
description of
Thanks,
this.
man. Thank you.
So you live in Vegas now, but
do.
did you grow up in Vegas?
I didn't. Born in Indiana. We moved around a lot. Moved down to Texas, out to California, back to Indiana, Colorado, and then that's where I did my time, was in Colorado. And then upon getting out, I went down to Vegas to be close to my mom and dad, and lived there for 7 years. Moved out to Laguna Beach for 7 years, and now I'm back in Vegas for the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, you lived there originally before California, and
I
then
did.
moved back.
Yeah, it's. I couldn't talk my wife into coming to Las Vegas. She was like, "I'm never leaving. I'm not going." We lived on the beach. I got it, and she was happy there. And she's really easy. I don't want her to sound like I don't want to sound like she's a bitch. She's not. She's really easy, but she wanted to be close to her family, and they were in California, and she hated the heat. And I'm like, "We'll get a pool. It'll be great." And now she loves it. She loves it a lot.
Yeah, I think that's what's holding me back too, because my family's out here.
Yeah.
My dad's getting older, so that I don't know if that's in the cards for me to go West Coast just yet, but I think definitely at some point in my career, I could see myself out there.
I think like we were talking about off camera, I think that it would be a really good idea for you, even if you just got a small studio out there and did some shows. You just went out there for a week or two and you wrapped up a bunch of West Coast shows out there and made it easy for the people from LA or from, in Phoenix, even in Vegas. I mean, there's so many people in Vegas now that could be great for your show. But I think it would be good for you. But family's always first, man.
Yeah, I actually gratefully get to use Spotify Studio in LA. We have a deal with them, so I get to go out there. I go out there like once every couple months.
Nice.
And we shoot at their studio. So sometimes people will see me in a different studio. That's why.
You're doing something right, man. If you got Spotify Studio, you're doing all right. Good for you. They don't offer me anything.
They have these beautiful studios that just sit there just for creators. They actually invited me to an event this Wednesday with Halsey. She's doing like a live performance with the CEO of Spotify. So I'm shooting to LA for the day before I go to Texas.
Oh, all right. I'm right down the road.
So when you said we growing up, who were you growing up with? Did you have your mom and dad together?
My mom left my father when we were very young, probably 5. I was maybe 4 or 5, something like that. And then we moved to Texas. And then right when I was about 6, my stepdad was a Mormon missionary. And he came to the house and he would be, coming over and teaching us about the Mormon church. And I guess, he fell in love with my mom and he was like, "I'm going to finish my mission. And when I come back, I'm going to marry you." And she like laughed at him. And that dude came back and he was with her all the way until she died a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was a good man. He took so there was myself, my older sister, my 2 younger brothers. There were 4 of us that we had before he came along, and then he had another little girl with my mom. So there were a total of 5 of us. But 4 for a very long time, he took care of us, and he gave us the best life that he could. He was a good man, good role model.
Did you have any relationship with your actual dad?
No, actually, the first time I really saw and spent any time with him, he came to visit me in county jail when I was waiting to go to prison. And he came out from Indiana, and he died shortly after I'd gotten out. So we didn't really have we didn't have a bad relationship, but there were things that happened with him and my mom that, are really tough to get over as a man and as someone, who was, went with their mother and, knows a lot of the story. So it was tough.
Do you wish that they had stayed together through your childhood?
Shit, no. No. I think he was a really bad guy. Younger. They were together. I mean, I think they had my sister at 15. And then, I was right after that, and my brother. So they were young kids, but he wasn't the greatest guy. And his brothers, I think, were Hell's Angels, and they did a lot of bad things to him, and he did a lot of those things back to my mom. And so she had to get away from there, and we had to get away from there just for safety's sake at that age. And so I don't. I'm glad. But what I did find out was, I'm close with his second family and and his kids and everything. And he was a good dad to them. He was a really good dad to them. So I think it worked out for everybody.
Were you and your siblings close? Or?
We're super close. Yeah, we're, my sister lives right down the street. Actually, my older sister and my younger sister, she just moved down the road. So they're both within 10 minutes of me. My brother, he's only 11 months younger than me, and he lives in Colorado. I just spoke to him last night and told him about, he's like, what are you doing in Connecticut? I was like, oh man, I'm really excited. But, so we were really close. And I have another younger brother as well. We're all really close.
They're getting a snowstorm right now, right? Colorado?
Probably. Well, we flew over it and it was completely white.
Wow.
We're like, I'm not missing that at all.
How would your siblings describe you as a kid if we had them here today?
Oh man, I don't know. That's a good question. I was always pretty happy, I think, and emotional. I was close to my mom. Loved sports and music. I always loved music. I was always a music fan. I thought that I would be Michael Jackson at a very young age. I believe that they would all be good things. I mean, I've always tried to be a good person. Our parents raised us to be good people. We made some mistakes, but I think that they were proud of me then, and I know they're proud of me now.
Did your family have money growing up?
No. We lived, I think when we moved back to Indiana, we were in the projects there. I mean, like we never had money. We did, when we moved out to California from Texas, my dad he was working 2 full-time jobs. And so he was doing not fantastic, but we were not for the first time, like, always out of money. We had clothes. We had all of the, the things that we needed. And not that we ever didn't have everything that we needed, but it was much more comfortable. It was much more comfortable out there. But yeah, and then it was kind of right back to, after we left there, it was all right back to the kind of trap of not having a lot, not having much, doing the best that we could to survive. Was
that common for the areas you were living in, or were you guys like the outlier?
I think, looking back at my friendships and my friends, I think that we were the struggling family. But you never know as a kid, you just have no idea. But it looked like, my best friends, his dad was a vet and his mom was a nurse, or my dad, this guy's owned a big construction company. And so I think that they did well for themselves. And again, we're talking when my stepdad, and I call him my dad, but when my dad got with my mom, he was just a missionary and he was only 19 and he took all 4 of us on. So he didn't have a lot of life experience, and my mom certainly didn't have a lot of life experience. So they were literally kids with no education and no extended education and no real clear, linear career path. And so they were just kind of doing the best that they could. And, that came in the form of a lot of different careers and jobs, What
was your high school experience like?
Well, there were several of them. We moved around quite a bit. So
that must have been tough.
Yeah, it's always tough. I started in Indiana, and it was a very bad school. There was a lot of violence and a lot of just bad things happening out there. And so my parents decided to move us out with my aunt and uncle out to Colorado, the small town. And we moved out to the small town, and there was probably 1,200 people there. And oddly enough, I was a freshman, and my wife, she was actually in the 5th grade. So I was in the 9th, she was in the 5th. And of course, nothing like that, but nothing like weird romantic thing. But so the school has two hallways. The high school hallway is on the side, and the like preschool through, I think maybe 5th grade or 6th grade is on this. And then on this side, it's like the 7th through the 12th grade. It's very, very small. There was like 9 kids in my graduating class. And so everybody knew who each other was, you know, and we all passed, we all crossed paths. The older kids would go to the younger kids' classes and talk to them. And so I got there, and we it was great. We're playing sports. We won state championships, and it was a lot of fun. Then my parents moved back out, and so we moved with them, and we changed schools to a different school, and we kind of started getting a little bit too much freedom, maybe, and that's when things kind of, you know, went south.
Wait, you and your wife met all the way back then?
Yes. It's oddly enough. So we met all the way back then, and then I was living out in Laguna Beach, and I had been there for a couple of years, and I saw her on Facebook, and we had all of the same friends, and I recognized her, but I didn't know, like, why do I know her? And we have all the same friends from Colorado. And finally, she was in prison. And so when she got out, like a year after I had messaged her, she was like, yeah, I'm right down. She was in Newport. So she was 7 miles away from me out in California. And we met up for lunch one day, and we have been together ever since. That's been 12 years and 2 kids.
Wow. I love a good love story.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How much impact do you think moving around, switching schools had on your childhood?
You know, it at the time, obviously, like you said, it sucked. It's rough, you know, but it's like you really can learn a lot about adapting, you know. I mean, when you've been in prison, you know about adapting, right? And you really, unfortunately, there's so many different attitudes that come along with this. And I've seen them on here, and I've seen them on other shows on TikTok where everybody's all hard and, you know, and that's not adapting. I don't think it's not a healthy way of adapting. And I think moving around, it teaches you very, very quickly how to adapt to your environment, how to adapt to different, you know, personalities. In the long run, it was really great, I think, for all of us. At the time, it was very tough.
So when's the first time you get into trouble?
I was 17 and 16, and my brother, he'd been in quite a bit of trouble. He was having a tough time, and you know, the group of kids that we were friends with, that were all kind of. We had one friend whose dad passed away, and so he had a trailer, his own trailer, and his mom moved out and moved in with her boyfriend, and so we were 15, 16, and 17 over at this. Our own place, basically. We would go and stay over there, and it was just kind of like anything goes. And so things started happening to try and get money, I think, and to just try and make our way in life not suck so bad. And then I think for some of those guys, it was really about the excitement of just, you know, doing dumb shit. And which is, you know, all great people, but just being a kid, you know, and not having somebody there to hold their hand and our hand and say, you know, this looks fun and this looks great, but it's really not, and it's going to hurt you really badly, and these are the repercussions, and none of us were thinking about those things. And so there was they had all gotten together and robbed a convenience store, and it was like. My brother had been in a lot of trouble, like I had said, and some of the other guys had been in trouble. And so, you know, it was like every one of these guys, I was 17, they were 16. They were talking about charging people as an adult. And then I got a public defender. They were trying to charge me with, I don't know what they were it's been a long time, but ultimately, my public defender told me that I should plead guilty to aggravated armed robbery. And I was never near that place. I never went near it. I never had anything to do with it. But at the same time, I felt like I was maybe taking some of the heat off of my brother. And, you know, as my public defender had explained to me that they were going to charge him as an adult. and if they had gotten, that he had either planned it or driven the car or whatever it was. And I think there's a lot of mess in there now that is just really, really fuzzy for me all of these years later. And I think, the judge was really awful, and he was trying to make an example. And my public defender really just didn't care at all. And the district attorney, I think his daughter was the one that was working at the gas station. And nobody was hurt, but it was just a really unfortunate situation. And after it had happened, and by the time they had found out who had done what, and somebody had heard a conversation of one of them talking, and everything was turned into the cops, I had turned 18, just turned 18. So boom, charged me. And, I was thinking I was going to get the same thing. I was told I was going to get the same thing as my brother was going to get, which was like a juvenile boot camp, right? And they gave him 4 years. I thought I was going to get 4 years. They gave me 8.
Why did they give you double than your brother?
I don't know. They were trying to make an example. And so, and I know that they knew that I was not, like the culprit there. And maybe that I was trying to take some of that heat off, and maybe I did and maybe I didn't, but I always felt like I did. And that was like kind of like the goal there, was to try and take whatever I could away from my brother. And he didn't ask me to, and he had no idea. And it was something that I was just trying to, navigate as a young kid and do my best to get through, because it was scary. It was scary as shit. But I didn't think I was going to get 8 years. I thought I was going to go to this juvenile place, and they gave me 8 years, and I ended up doing almost 7.
What was his first conversation with you when he found out you were, pleading guilty to something you didn't do?
I don't remember. I mean, I know that we talked about it years later, and I think that he had a lot of things that he didn't understand about how it had all gone down and all had happened. And, the police really wanted this situation. It was a small town. They wanted us really bad. And I think that they did a lot of things that were not, that if they happened today, all of this stuff would have been, it would, I don't think it ever could have made it to court had they, had to hold up to the standard that they have to hold up to now with cameras and with, just the accountability factor that's there today that wasn't there back then. And so we've talked about it, and I think it's like, maybe it's just easier that we don't really dig into it. It was I think it was really rough for him. It was really, it was tough. I had a pretty awesome prison experience. Like, my prison experience was like nobody else's. I hear all of these stories and I get it. I get, but it's all about mentality, I think, right? And mine, I know the last 3 years that I was in prison, I lived the Rockstar lifestyle in prison. And that's all about attitude. And I think we can get into that too. But I just think it may be easier that if we haven't like really dived into it, maybe we should, but maybe that's why we still have a great relationship,
Why do you think they wrapped you up into that, like to charge you to begin with?
I was in the crew. That was still my little crew. That was my brother, my best friends, all of us. We were always together. They, I was at the house when that happened. The girl that I was seeing, they used her car. So it was all kind of just like I thought that when I was pleading guilty to that whole thing, that I was pleading guilty to planning this thing. Right. And then when I go back and I was trying to get out of this, like, Colorado only has one maximum security prison, and it's for like really death row and only a few, maybe 100 people that just can't get along with anybody. Everything else is like medium, close, medium, and then you work your way down. And I was in Buena Vista, which is like a medium, close gladiator school, really. And it was just kind of like, I lost my train of thought. What was the question again?
About why they charged you
yeah.
that night, and you were saying how it's your crew.
Yeah. So we just, it was like I think that they wanted to get as many people in there wrapped up in it as much as possible. And they did. And I told, when I got to the prison, I had realized that my public defender really did an awful job from beginning to end, top to bottom. And what I thought I was pleading guilty to, they told me when I got there why I was in this place with everybody in there was like 40 years, 60 years. I had 8, right? Everybody I knew. I don't think I met anybody that had under 20 years in there that was, it was a pretty crazy situation. But I think that like, it was a violent offense. That's when I found out it was a violent offense, and that's why I was there. And I was like, how is, planning the robbery, if it wasn't there, a violent offense? And I got all of my papers, and it said that I was, I thought what I was told was I was pleading guilty to aggravated robbery with armed Confederate. I'll never forget that. And they explained to me that meant you knew about it before, and you knew about it after, and you didn't do anything. And then when I got to prison, my paperwork said aggravated armed robbery, period. Aggravated armed robbery. And so there was so much there that still doesn't make sense. And I have this guy, that judge, he sent a lot of kids to prison, and I don't know if he was really trying to do his job or just, keep it for a long, long time, or if he thought he was really helping out, but he didn't. He hurt a lot of kids.
Why weren't you there that night of the robbery?
Because the girl's car that they were using, I was busy.
Oh, you're busy. And what was their intention? Did they just want money, or are they doing it for the thrill? It was
no,
some
I
money.
think it was just money. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like $400.
So you would have went with them?
I never would have gone in anything like that. Never.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
That's never, I'm not a thrill seeker. I've never gotten into like stealing, robbery, guns, that stuff. That's never been my thing. I'm not a violent person. I prefer to kind of like, talk things out and get things, worked out, between people as opposed to, being violent. I mean, can I fight? I absolutely had to a few times in there. But I just, it just, that never did anything for me. I can't say that I had my eyes set on other things, but, that just never did anything for me.
Where was your mom in all of this when the criminal proceedings were going on?
She was at the house. She was at the house with my dad. And like I said, we would just be spending the night out over at my friend's house where we were just running amok, all of us. And, hey, we're over here tonight. And, I don't think she had any idea that there were no adults there at all, ever. And so there was a lot of stuff going on over there, and that would have been, could have probably gotten people at 25 or 26 in trouble. And we were doing it at 15, 16, and 17.
But after you got arrested, she wasn't there to like make sure you weren't getting
after I got arrested, we none of us, we never got out after that. We were, and then when we did get out, we were adults, so we didn't go back home, I guess, so to speak, as children after we had been arrested.
So she wasn't really there to like counsel you guys and give you advice?
No.
So you almost really got railroaded.
I think every person involved there got railroaded, not just me. I think every single one of them got railroaded. And there should have been more compassion on that side, and not just from, because these were my people or my friends or my family or whatever. I don't think that they gave a shit. And you have to, as a judge, you have to have some sort of level of compassion to be able to see, hey, you know what, this could be a huge mistake and a turning point in this person's life, and let's give them this opportunity or this option. Instead, you know what, you're going to prison, and what's going to happen to you is going to happen to you, and that's just wrong. especially at 18 years old, 17 years old. I know that those kids, my brother and his friends and our friends, they all had to deal with the same kind of things in that boot camp, because it wasn't just like a boot camp, 6 weeks and you're out. You go through a boot camp and then you're in a really solid, strict program, and they were in that for 3, 4, 5 years. And so it wasn't like something easy that they could go through. I know that they suffered through the same kind of situations that I did.
Would you have went off to college if you never went to prison?
I think about that. I think so. I mean, I would have hoped so. Now I know that college isn't for me, but I'm 46, and I don't mean it as a 46-year-old man. I mean, I don't think that college would have ever been for me. But even back then, I may have. I loved sports. I loved playing sports. I had, but I don't know that I really had a good plan for myself. I mean, it maybe could have ended up a lot worse. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So you get sentenced now at 18 to the 8 years.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind when that happens?
I was so scared. And I was sitting in county jail, and I was in county jail for a while, and I had a couple of guys in there, and they were older guys, and they were both in big bike gangs, like really big bike gangs. And one of them was like an enforcer, so he was like pretty serious. But I never had problems with people like this. They all kind of like took me under their wings. They were all really good to me, and they would teach me, and they would say, yeah, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. And when you do this. And so, but at the same time, they were like, look, you have the right to be scared, and you should be. It's a really scary situation that you're going into, especially for 8 years. And your age, you're going to end up here. And I did. I ended up there. And there's 1 million prisons in Colorado. There's just way too many. But I did go to the one that, I absolutely didn't want to go to, which was, they say it's a gladiator school, and it's just fighting and, people getting stabbed. And it's just it's a lot of ugliness there. Everybody trying to prove themselves to each other. It's the stupidest thing. Right. And, so it was really scary. Really scary. And then, I got there and I realized, what? I was 18 and I was 6 feet, 2 inches tall, and nobody was bothering me. Nobody messed with me. I didn't have to walk around and be like, hey, yo, Wood. I mean, all these, I don't get those stories. I don't understand them. They don't. And I lived it for a long time. And so, I mean, I look at those things like, if you talk like that, you're one of two things. You're either living it or you're lying, right? You're living it or you're lying it. Because I was there, and I was really in the middle of it, and I played a lot of sports. So I hung with the black guys, I hung with the white guys, the Mexican guys. It didn't matter. I was right in the middle of all of that. I never had to walk around with my chest out and act like I was bad, and that stuff never made sense to me. I felt like the people that really mattered in prison to me were the guards. And if you treated them well, and I don't mean like telling on people, if you treated them well, like regular people that they were trying to do their job, there were a couple of dickheads, of course. And I remember them. I remember their names still. There's a lot I forgot, but I will never forget their names. There was only 3 of them in all of that time. The rest of those guys were pretty great people. They did a job, they wanted to go home, and the better you treated them, the more you treated them like a peer or like somebody that was working with you, the more they did that to me and for me. And that's why, like I said, the last 3 years of my prison sentence, all of my friends would be like, dude, you get the Rockstar prison experience while we're in there, and I did. They treated me well because I treated them well.
Do you think a lot of it had to do with your age, why you weren't being like recruited into anything or getting in any trouble?
No, I had situations that happened. I had gotten in fights because of sports. It happens, there was another situation where there was a church band, and there was this black guy played bass crazy. And I mean, I play with the best now, right? This guy was unbelievable musician. He was incredible bass player, but the knowledge that he had of music was just like, I couldn't even grasp it. Right. And so I just loved him. I loved watching him, and he was just brilliant. And if you can play music the way that guy did to me, I mean, you're an idol of mine. And I was a young kid. Right. So one day I went into the chow hall and I sat down, and, I sat down at a 2-seater, and he came and sat with me at lunch. And like, this was a big no-no apparently, but I never, I didn't think about it. All of a sudden, like all of the guys that I had, not all of them, but a lot of the guys that I had talked to or kind of friends with, they stopped talking to me and they kind of shunned me. And then I heard like these things about, not wanting to have anything to do with me, and even like fighting and stuff like that. And I brought them to my room. I got all of those guys together and I brought them to my cell. And I was like, look, I heard what's going on. I've heard you guys talking about this. I've heard from this and this and this. And I was like, look, I've never pretended to be like you people. I don't believe in this race thing, right? I told them, this guy, he's a beautiful person to me. I learned so much from this man just in a couple of minutes. I've learned more from him in 5 minutes than I've learned from you guys in all of the time that we've been here. And this is what I want to do with my life. You guys? Nothing. I don't get anything from you. And I'm like, I'm not talking shit, and I'm not trying to hurt you guys or fight you or anything else. What I am trying to say is we're not the same. Just because I don't live by your principles doesn't mean that we shouldn't be cool. And everybody shook hands with me, and it was over after that. I never had any issues. They were like, you're right. I got some sorries I'm sorry. And, I just never pretended to be anything that I wasn't in there.
No, Colorado didn't have any programs to reduce that time from 8 all the way down to half or parole or anything.
No, Colorado's messed up, man. So they have you heard of mandatory parole?
Not really. I'm not too familiar with parole because federal, there's no parole.
Got it. Okay, so it's jacked up, dude. So you can get a maximum sentence, whatever that statute is in Colorado, and then you have a mandatory parole period on top of that, depending on what your class felony was. So at any time, so like they do a lot of tricky things in Colorado, right? So they have to parole a certain amount of people a year. They have to. It's just like whatever their deal is. And so how they do that is like me. I went to the parole board 3 times and they just kept denying me. But the last time I went, they paroled me to my mandatory release date, which was a year away. So technically I got parole, but I wasn't allowed to leave for a year when they couldn't keep me anymore. So they paroled me to my mandatory release date. Then when I got out, I started a new sentence, 5 years of mandatory parole because of the class of felony. So at any time, I could go back to prison during that time. And I think that was the worst. That was like the most stressful because those parole officers in Las Vegas are no bueno.
Tell us about your transition from, those early days of prison to actually kind of getting on your path and figuring out what you want to do. Because from what I've read about you, a lot of prison had, a lot to do with it. Yeah,
I think prison definitely made me who I am today or helped me become who I am today for sure. And so, one of the greatest lessons in life I learned in prison, which was never be afraid to hear no, right? Ego, it really has no place for your growth as a person in life. If you can lose your ego, man, the sky is the limit. Nothing can hurt you, right? Don't ever be afraid to hear no. And so for a while there, I was like, I'm going to play in the NBA when I get out of here, right? I was sure of it. And I was a good player. I got to be really good in there. That's all I did. And I was sure I was going to play. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to write to the president of the Nuggets, Kiki Vandeweghe, Hall of Famer. He was the president of the Nuggets at the time. I wrote him and I'm like, hey, I'm turning my life around, and I am going to get out in about 3 years and I'm going to come and play for the Nuggets. And that dude wrote me a handwritten letter back. And he was like, hey, I'm really glad you're working on yourself and making changes in your life. We have to do everything through the draft, but we do have this thing coming up starting next year called the D League. and which is now the G League. It's a big deal, the development league of the NBA. And he's like, if you want, we're going to put that in the paper where people can come and try out. Folks can come in and try out for the team. And so just keep your eye on that. If you're not going through the draft, we can't do anything for you. But this would be a way for you to make it onto the team. And so what I realized was all of my friends, I told them, and they were laughing at me before I got anything back. Like, I'm going to write to him and I'm going to tell him I'm going to come and play for the Nuggets. And they thought it was funny. And it wasn't so funny when he wrote me back, right? You know what that did was it gave this glimmer of hope. And I needed that. I know I needed it. Even if it was subconscious, I needed that little bit of hope. But maybe to my friends that I was reading this handwritten letter from a Hall of Fame basketball player who's the president of a $1 billion franchise, maybe it gave them a little bit of hope too. I don't know, but I know that it was like very eye-opening. It wouldn't have hurt me if he never wrote me back. I just was expecting him not to, but he did. And so I started teaching myself guitar inside, and I would play in the yard. You could check out a guitar when the gym was open. So I'd play in the yard and I'd be singing and playing. And then, after a little while, I started to get okay. And the chaplain, he's walking by and he hears me. And so let me back up for a second. I get to this, it's a minimum security facility in Delta, Colorado. And it's like 11 miles from where I was from. And so they're like, look, you have work crews and all of that stuff. You're never getting out because you live right here, right? We can't take a chance of you bringing anything in or meeting anybody. You know how that goes, right? And so like, all right, cool, no problem. But so then I'm playing the guitar, and I'd been there already 2 years maybe. And he walks by and he's like, you can sing. You should come and sing in the choir. And I'm like, I'm cool, man. He's like, no, you go to the choir and you get to go out, and we go and sing in the towns, and you get real food. And, we have these Christmas parties where we go and sing. And I'm like, they told me they'd never let me out. And he goes, if you'll sing in the choir, I will get you a gate pass. And I was like, I'm telling you, I lived in Montrose. They're not going to do it. And he said, if you will sing in the choir, I will get you a gate pass. And I was like, sure, man. And you know how it's so different. Like, prison is so different than the movies. You don't talk to the warden. You don't see the warden. Like, you don't have conversations like you do in the Shawshank Redemption. It's not like he's a busy dude. He's got other things. There's a chain of command, and you're way down here. And one day I'm walking to the chow hall with my friends, and the warden is standing at the control center, and he's like, hey, he calls me by my name, and he says, come here. And we're all looking at each other. And so I walk over, and he goes, if I give you a gate pass, are you going to do anything stupid? And I said, no. And he said, okay. So the next day I had a gate pass, and I went out to the chapel, which had a lot of great music gear and equipment that, of course, I didn't have. I didn't have anything other than some shitty acoustic guitars in the gym. And it was like, I saw why he wanted me to go out with them. They didn't have a lot of great singers. And so he threw me out front with a microphone and had the whole choir behind me. And that weekend we went out for the first time, and we sang at a church had burnt down. So they had it at the local high school, their church. And we sang. And this is one of the best moments of my life, man, still to this day. And we're after you get done singing, you could go and stand in front of the stage, shoulder to shoulder, all of us in a line. And the patrons can line up, over here, and then walk by and shake your hand. Good job. Go with God. Stay out of trouble. All that stuff. Very nice to meet you. And I'm like 3/4 of the way in through this line. And there's a big line in front of me. And this little girl is probably 11, maybe 12. And she goes, you're going to be famous. Can I have your autograph? And I was like, I looked at my friends, and they're like, this guy is like, do it, fool. I was like, okay, So I did. And this guy, he's probably 50, behind her. He says, I don't know much about music, but if she thinks you're going to be famous, I should probably get your autograph too. And that day I handed out probably 70 autographs in my prison uniform, And I knew, like, it wasn't the feeling of fame or feeling of what was going to happen, but it was the feeling that these people, I did something that they really enjoyed and they really cared about, and they loved it enough to come and tell me that they loved it. And that was what was my spark. That was my spark. So we'd start going out and we'd sing in these churches, and we're making money for the prison. And then the warden, or not the warden, but the chaplain comes up to me. He's like, I got an idea. We're going to start a prison band, right? And so now we're going to go to these other churches when we're not doing the choir. I'll get you a guitar, drummer, bass, and you're going to sing and you're going to lead worship at this time. And so then we start going out more, right? All the time I'm gone. And it becomes this big thing. And then he's like, so every year there's a parade in this town, and it's called the Del Dorado Days Parade. And he's like, Stephen, we're going to make a float, and we're going to put you on the front of the float, and we're going to put the band on there and the choir behind it, and we're going to run it off of a generator, and we're going to play live. And we did. And so we cruise through the town, and I'm singing and I'm playing guitar, and it's the craziest thing because I'm in my prison greens, and we won first place, right? It was $5,000 for the Chapel of Hope. And the coolest thing was, like, 2 days later, he calls me into the office and he's like, you're never going to believe this. Phil Driscoll, who was like the biggest Christian singer at the time, it's like, Phil Driscoll's assistant was in town and they saw you, and they called and they said, can this guy open up for him in concert next month? And I was like, whoa, that's great. What'd you say? He's like, as long as the choir can do it. And I was like, that's awesome. What'd they say? It was like, yeah. So we opened up for this guy, Phil Driscoll, and it was amazing. We sang and we did our thing and went and sat down, and then he got up and sang, and you could tell this guy was just like Christian music, but he was a rock star, you know, I mean, beautiful, amazing voice, crazy, just talented. And he came to the crowd and grabbed me and pulled me up and did a song with him. And Jesus, lover of my soul, I will never forget it. And I just knew there that that's what I wanted to do when I got out, and, you know, taking that attitude. So I took every opportunity in there that I could, no matter what it was, no matter how small it felt, they could always turn into something really big. And so while everybody else was out killing themselves every day, digging holes for fence posts in the freezing cold, -11 wind chill in the snow in Colorado for 25 cents a day. They're paying me $3 a day to go to the shift commander's office after midnight, empty his trash, and go back to my room. You know, so I had all day to do whatever I wanted to do. And that was because I treated them, you know, like I would want to be treated. I treated them like regular people. And again, I wasn't there telling on anybody. I wasn't giving up secrets. You didn't have to do that. You just had to treat them like human beings. That's all they wanted. And the more you did that, the more they gave you back, the more they treated me like a human being and just a guy that was in trouble, or a guy that was even hanging out, walking across the yard to go empty the trash in the shift commander's office. So it became a really big thing, and that's what I wanted to do with my life in there. And, maybe find a way to help other people that have been in that position, just like you're doing now. And, I couldn't even imagine it on the scale that you're doing it right now. But you can never dream big enough in there. You know how it is. You get these dreams and you think they're so big, and then you get out and they're attainable. They really are. And then you realize, man, I should have aimed a lot higher than that, but I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. But that's what's so cool about your podcast, and what you're doing here isn't for me, and it isn't for your other guests. It's for the millions of guys and women that get out, or that can see these and realize and understand that there's so much more to life, and it's not that it's all attainable. And like I said, so kudos to you for doing this, because you're not trying to show the cool side of being in prison. You're just like, this is what happens, and you can do better. We can all do better. We could always do better. I love that about you, and I love that about the show.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I think it's I've really grown so much with the show Like when I first started, it was on my list. I need to get all these celebrities. I need to get the biggest names.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like I've realized there's more hassle than anything dealing with the celebrity, because then you got to title it a certain way. You got to deal with this. You got to deal with that. And their story's been told.
Yeah.
So yes, it's cool. I think to me, like a photo with them is cooler than anything. Like how I get to bump heads with them and be in the same room as them.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. But this dynamic doesn't work the same. I feel like if it was with one of them, it just way more different from an audience perspective with a regular person.
Right.
Who's never shared their story before
Right.
like this. You know, if you had shared your story, 50 times on 50 other podcasts, I just think it's different. Like when I go on another person's podcast to share mine, I've told it so many times.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. So I think my role is to have the people that haven't told their story come have a safe place and just roll with it,
No, it's great. You ask great questions and you let it just like you said, it rolls out. It's really, what you've done is really great.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Did you know you had a talent for singing and music, or do you think you needed that chaplain to bring it out of you?
Man, it's so funny. I always thought I was really good at faking it, at faking like singing. And I mean, I got Slash on my song. I got T-Pain on my song, Bubba Sparks, Steve Harwell from Smash Mouth. I've worked with so many amazing people over all of these years, and those are great stories. And the Slash story is really great. But the fact is, I always thought I was faking it. I was really good at faking it up until just like I would say. Right around this time last year was really when I think I realized that I belonged here, like I belonged in this space, and it was because my buddy Charlie Collin, he was in Train, and he was the bass player and songwriter, Drops of Jupiter and Calling All Angels and Meet Virginia, all of these, he came and he stayed with my family and I, and we were working on new music and the show that I'm doing in Vegas. And, it was him. He was like, I'd heard it a bunch of times, but again, I always felt like I was faking it. And he was like, you belong here. Your voice, you can sing. I've had the best, Pat Monahan in my band. It's like, you can sing, you belong here. You're the real deal, man. And you need to understand that. And that was kind of like really eye-opening for me. This guy's won 3 Grammys, and he's written some of the best songs ever. And, it was right about that same time that Mike Ward from the Wallflowers, he said the same thing to me. And he was with the Wallflowers. He was with Gavin DeGraw. He was with, so many people that you can't argue the logic, And so to answer your question very long, I never believed that until, recently, even despite having all of those guys on my songs.
So why do you think you still ran with it then in prison? Was it just to, get out and experience the free world while you were incarcerated, or were you passionate about it?
No, I always loved singing. I mean, I always loved it. I just didn't think I was great. Mm-hmm. My mom was a really beautiful singer. My sister had a really, really great voice. So I think I always kind of measured myself against that. And like I always say now, you can only quantify your own success. You can't measure it against anybody else's. It's, and I had to learn that. But I loved singing and I loved making people happy. And I love that about performing. And so I absolutely stuck with it, but it was my opportunity I got to where the last year I was in prison, I was only in there to sleep. That's it. The only time I was inside the walls were to sleep. Everything else, they had me going out to play softball in the rec league, basketball in the rec league. I was in the church. I mean, if I wasn't in the choir singing somewhere, I was in the church band singing somewhere. I mean, it was always something. And so I loved that. It was an opportunity to get out. But at the same time, I saw that, you can, the power of music, you can do a lot with the power of music, man.
Was country always your style, or did you grow into that? Or
No. So after Cowgirl, in 2009, I cut Cowgirl, and the guy that produced it, he was working with Velvet Revolver to try and find their new singer after they had kicked Scott Weiland out of the band, and they were doing demos. And so I was like, hey, man, do you think Slash would be on this song? And he laughed at me. My producer laughed at me. And I didn't say anything. And then he finally stopped. And he was like, you're serious? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, I guess couldn't hurt to ask. So he got on the phone and he messaged him, and he messaged me right back, and he said, hey man, he said he's super busy. He gave me the polite blow off, right? Super busy, doesn't really have a lot of time right now. He'd send the song over and he'd absolutely listen to it, but just to let you know, he really couldn't do it. He doesn't have the time. I was like, all right, well, I appreciate it. And he goes, well, I'm going to send it over anyway, but it was a good idea. After he had laughed at me, right? It was a good idea. And so I walk into the movie. I'm walking into a movie with my wife at the time, and sat down, and it took about the time it takes to listen to the song before I got a message that said, call me right now. And I walked outside, and he said, Slash loves the song and he wants to do it. And I was like, that was one of my goals when I was in prison, was to do something with Slash and Uncle Kracker. Those were my two. Those were my guys. And so I was like blown away. But I thought once Slash was on the song that all the radio stations would play it, had this big guy and that would be it. Cause I knew it was a good song, and that didn't happen. And, it takes a lot of money or a lot of connections to make something grow. That was 2009. So I worked on that. I was in the beverage industry as my regular job, but for every single day for 5 years, I pushed that song. I wrote to radio stations. I emailed people. I wrote to record labels, even on Sundays. Every single day I did something for that song. I didn't care for it. I didn't think that it wasn't a passion of mine, that song, but I knew it had something besides Slash. That was just like an extra. And 5 years, I worked my ass off. I never quit. I never gave up on that. I knew it was going to be, I knew it could be something. And then finally, I got it onto some radio stations in the Midwest, and it started charting on Billboard. And then I got it onto Sirius XM, and it started outselling everybody that was on there. And at the time, it was like Lil Wayne, U2, Kid Rock, and it was killing. And I had no label, nothing. That was just me doing it.
Wow.
And but 5 years, man, I never gave up on that for 5 years. And I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And then finally, I got my record deal out of that at 35 years old. I got my first record deal.
People don't see that back part.
No.
Like I know the path I'm on now, like I'm still in the infancy. Like this is, it'll be year 2 in January at 2 years. And it's like, Rogan did it for years and years, Theo Von, all these guys before they really blew up.
Right.
So I feel like if I keep at it and the consistency, I'm on that trajectory.
Ian, I've had the great pleasure of walking in here. Like, so hearing your podcast and even seeing it are completely different than walking in and seeing all of the work that you do. It's a different story, right? We only see what we can see or hear what we can hear. And you can't fault people for that. But at the same time, you want them to know, I struggled for this. I worked my ass off for this. I killed myself for this. I bled, I cried, I worked. You can walk into your office, into this door, and know you did all of those things, and you've done all those things, and you're doing all of those things. And that's what it takes to be successful. But you can live in that moment and be proud of it. You don't need anybody else to, you don't need other people to adore you for that. I have goosebumps. You have to be proud, because I was proud of you when I walked in, man, just from everything that I had read about you and the fact that you're giving your money, but you are still paying people back, and you're at $30,000. I read about that.
Oh, that was old. It's way more now. Yeah.
Dude.
I'm down to 340,000 left.
See, you can get away with not doing that.
A lot of people I interview do
that's
that.
what I mean. And you're not. That means that you changed, right? Whatever life path you were on in there, you said you were going to make a change and you were going to make it up to these people. And that's the real rare part, right? We can all talk. You've had people in here that I know that, aren't exactly like, what they say they are. But your actions really speak louder than words. And like I said, I'm just super proud. I saw all the work that you did walking in here, and the fact that you're doing it all on yourself and editing, and dude, you have a lot going on, man.
I love the hustle of it. You know, I just have to work on not spreading myself too thin with other stuff. Like I want to help people too, but I also have to stay on focus with my thing.
Can't help anybody until you help yourself, man.
Yeah.
So you got to get in you got to get in your zone first. And once you're set and you're rolling, you can continue to do this and it'll get bigger and bigger and you'll help more people. But that platform grows as you grow, but you have to allow yourself the time to grow and be good to yourself while you're doing it.
I got to get better at saying no. Like sometimes I'll say yes to stuff and it takes me off of like, I got to go to the gym in the morning. I go walk my dog. I do things and I have to say no. Like if I go out to a dinner at night to do something, it throws off my whole thing because that's time I should have been doing something else.
Yeah, but the best thing that you can do for yourself or for in life is care for yourself and make sure that because you're not going to be any good to anybody else if you're not good to yourself. And that doesn't mean spoiling yourself and being a dick. That means taking care of the things that are going to make you healthy and happy and be able to do what you're doing right now. And you are, man. So just keep at it.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
How old were you when you got out of prison? And what year was that?
25.
What year was that?
2000. Oh, so I just passed my 21 year. So it was 2003, October 22nd.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the world like when you got out? Was it really different?
Yeah, it was very different. It wasn't like, I had a flip phone when I went in, but I was the only one around that had a cell phone. And when I went in, and then I get out and everybody has them, and that's a culture shock. But people were different, right? I was an adult, so women were different, girls were different, and the world has changed a lot more since social media has happened. But it was very different and very, very, very scary. I didn't know exactly what to expect. I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I just didn't know how I was going to accomplish those things. And, I didn't know that so much in life was going to be based on relationships and, money. And I was lucky enough to meet, some really good people. Shannon, this guy Shannon, helped me get my music career started and off the ground so that we could go in and record with Slash. And then once I had Slash, it was like it made everything so much. I mean, I had a story and I had like real serious track record. I have Slash from Guns N' Roses on my song, not his song, my song. And then, I could go to, T-Pain with confidence and go, dude, I think I wrote the best song that I've written and I think it would be killer if you were on it. And then in 5 minutes, you get a message that says, that's dope, let's do it, after he hears it. And you've got confidence to go to Steve Harwell from Smash Mouth, who sings All-Star and Walking on the Sun. And he's like, man, I love this song, let's do it. Can you write a country album for me? And I never wanted to be country. When that song hit, and I got my record deal with it was company under Sony called the Necco. And we all sat down and they were like, we really want you to kind of go country and do this because the undertones of Cowgirl, which had nothing to do with country at all, to do a country album. And so that's what I did. And I thought they knew what they were talking about. And I just kind of took their advice, and it was cool for a while, but it was never really. And I love country music. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm from Indiana. I love country music, but that wasn't what I wanted to ever be. I wanted to be my own kind of thing.
So, what do you classify yourself as now?
I think it's just really like a pop or rock, artist. I think, like a lot of the stuff I'm working on now, I have songs that I did write with Charlie right before he passed away and we started recording, and Ward from the Wallflowers. But I'm working with, founding members of One Republic and Panic at the Disco and Third Eye Blind and Weezer and all of these really great bands, and we're all working on new songs, and so they're all kind of rock and pop, and it's still cool, but it's still fresh like today. But I love guitar, and there's not a lot of guitar and stuff today, but I don't want to take the guitar out,
Now, you experienced a lot of success in prison, just like with the music and doing everything you were doing. Were you expecting that to translate into a career quickly when you got out?
Maybe. I don't think I thought about it. I didn't know what to expect when I got out. I knew that I was going to have to get a job. I knew that I was going to go to live with my parents in Las Vegas. And even that was up in the air. And I didn't know what it was going to take to do really, to get to any of my goals. I just had these goals. And when I got out, my life became about doing everything that I could to make my parole officer happy and never go back, which meant working all the time. And that took away from, I think, probably at least 5 years of me getting it done even earlier, but I was so concentrating on not going back, and the parole officers in Las Vegas, they're just rough no matter what. And I know they get a lot to deal with, but I mean, it made it very hard to get there quicker and really even find a good outline of what I wanted to do. And so it cost a lot of money. It cost a lot of energy and a whole lot of tears and anger, to get to a point where I have been successful, even at the level that I'm at.
When do you think was your I made it moment?
Oh yeah, I was driving my niece, my brother's daughter, Madison. I was driving her back. She was visiting my mom in Vegas, and I was driving her back to Colorado after the summer was over. And we were listening to the radio, and I had not heard my song on the radio, and I had seen, there were places like I could show you that I was like number one above. At the time, Mirrors was a big one by Timberlake, and there was some stuff by Pink and Maroon 5, all these big hits. And like in certain areas, I was number one. That the song was number one above these guys, which is like still even saying it just sounds like a lie, even to me, right? And I'm still blown away by that. But we were sitting I was driving. She was in the back seat, and I remember it was Toxic. Britney Spears was on, and I only remember that because my song came on right after that. And I was just like, I looked back at my niece and she knew, and we were just like screaming. And I was like, whoa, this is pretty crazy. I've had so many amazing experiences. It's hard to nail down. I've been at dinner with Drake's dad and, Dennis, and in a club that nobody can get into. And by the end of the night, Gerard Butler sitting with us, and TJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia, and Nick, oh God, what's that guy's name? Nick, he's Simmons, Gene Simmons' kid, and Jeffrey Ross, and all of these people are trying to sit at our table, because Dennis is the coolest. He really is like the coolest guy there is. Dennis Graham, Drake's dad, is the freaking, if there is a picture of cool, it's Dennis Graham. And he is cool, and he's a good dude, right? He's great. And, but people are always like, is that really Drake's dad? And I'm like, yeah, that's Drake's dad. And they're like, hey, can I come over here? And these are like celebrities, and they want to come over and hang out because he's great. But I've been in a lot of positions where I still like, walking into the studio and with T-Pain for the first time, and just things that I never really would have dreamed. I said Slash and Uncle Kracker. Uncle Kracker is one of my great friends now, and I got to work with him on some of his stuff, a few years ago. And so I still have, every day, right before I got here, Freddie from Everclear texted me, right? These are bands that I love, and loved when I was a kid. And I'm like, I can never, ever. Yesterday was Adam from Matchbox 20. And I'm like, these are my favorite bands. I am just some dirtbag prisoner at a certain point, ex-convict that couldn't get a good job in Vegas because I was an ex-convict. And now I have a show there. And people come out, 1,000 of them at a time come out to see this show. And there are these amazing guys that played in these bands, and they're reaching out to me to want to do this with me. And so I have pinch me moments every day. When I'm on stage with Kevin from Third Eye Blind, the guy that wrote and played all of these great things, Jumper, right? And How's It Gonna Be? And I remember that stuff came out when I was in county jail. And I remember the sound. That we had this little stereo and like this little Bose stereo in the county lockup. We just listened to music all day. And I remember How's It Gonna Be and that riff coming on. And I remember, I will never forget the way that riff reverberated in the steel and the concrete. And I love music. I've always loved music. I've had a really special relationship with it in my head my entire life and in my heart. But I remember that, and it was a moment for me when I heard that. And How's It Gonna Be? How's it gonna be? And now I get to stand next to that guy on stage who wrote that, and played that. And I still have to freaking pinch myself. I look over there and sometimes, man, it'll draw a tear while I'm on stage because I still am like, how did I get here? A lot of pinch me moments, man. They still happen every day.
Do you think that your criminal past kind of delayed your process to make it in the music industry? Do you think it took longer because of that?
I don't think that. I don't. I think that music is one very forgiving field, a career field where, I mean, a lot of times if you can really, beat the odds, they'll use it for your publicity and to show that, this guy's hard or he's been here and I try and keep away from it as much as possible because I don't want to glorify it at all. In situations like this, it's really great because it's not glorifying. You're really showing, you really are reaching out and showing what you could do with your life despite what's happened and all of the things that it takes and what amazing and beautiful things you could still accomplish. But, music, I think, is very forgiving that way. I think it's easier to get into music with a convict background than it is to get a job. Oh, it's impossible to get a job at a casino, right, in Vegas. So I would say you have a better shot of being in music at some level.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've really seen it change over time. I think it's always been okay with like rappers and whatnot growing up. Like I remember Lil Wayne getting arrested and people like that, and that never derailed their career.
Right.
But now on a bigger perspective, I mean, look, you have the president of the United States that has felonies on his record, regardless of what people think of him. I feel like it's becoming more okay. Like as I'm growing, I have felonies on my record, and there's many people like me. You have felonies, you know? So I feel like it's shifted so much, even just from a few years ago, because I remember in 2016, a lot of the press was, oh, your life is over because, you're indicted, federal, this and that. But now social media has just changed it drastically.
Yeah, that's one of the good things that I think social media has done. I think it's more harmful than anything, but there is a lot that's really great about it too. And you're right. And I've seen so many shirts that say like my president is a felon or something like that, So I agree wholeheartedly. It's good that I think we're living in a world now where despite, cancel culture, people are still more willing to give second chances, especially when you go out and you try and earn them and earn that respect. And that's what I was talking about, you giving the money back and working on that, dude. That shows people that it's not just a farce and that you're just trying to, look good at that. That's That's a real number. That's sweat. That's sweat equity in giving back into what you did. And so I think that's what makes people believe in second chances.
Yeah, I think the world around second chances is definitely different because we did go through that phase with cancel culture, everyone getting canceled, you know, a couple of years ago or a few years ago. And now it's a lot different. And obviously someone shouldn't have a platform if they're racist or if they're, you know, there's other, you know, crimes against women or kids.
Right.
But the world has definitely changed from what I've seen in my experience in the criminal justice system in just a few short years.
Yeah, hopefully that never changes as far as those things that you mentioned, you know, that no, those guys never, I mean, I believe that a lot of people deserve second chances, almost most people, but the ones that you know, I'll sit on the cancel culture side of those, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you do like the those programs of going back into prisons and jails to sing? Because that's becoming very popular now.
Yeah. So, you know, I have been, we started this, shooting this reality show for TCN, the Country Network. And one of my other great friends and he's one of my best friends, the producer, was shooting it and doing everything. And then one of the episodes was we were going to go back to Delta where I played there, and we were going to play for the guys. And I was going to bring in all the All-Stars. We call them All-Stars. The Millennium All-Stars is the name of the show in Vegas. And I was going to bring those guys in, and we were going to record it and everything else. And he's stage 4. And he's having he's battling as much as he can. So we've had to put all of that stuff on hold. And I didn't want to move forward. The network has reached out about it, and they wanted to kind of keep pushing it forward. And I just felt like, you know, there's not enough value to me there, whether it's financial or otherwise, to move forward without, you know, my brother, my friend, and kind of cut him out because of the situation that he's in. And so, you know, so it's kind of difficult, but I have wanted to do that. And now I have like this really incredible band of guys that, you know, everybody knows every single one of these songs, and I do, you know, eventually want to try and get back in there one way or another. But I think that would be a really cool way to show these guys that, you know, there's life after prison for sure. I just haven't, man. It's tough for the timing has been really tough, but with the T, you know, as it's grown, my time has gotten short. And one thing I promised, you know, the people that were involved in the investment side of the T was, you know, that I'm not going to, you know, do music and then T on the side. It's got to be the T, and I'm using music as my vehicle to kind of push that along and let people know about the brand and my friendships and stuff in the business, you know. So, but man, that's a balancing act, and you know, that's tough.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I got to be all in on something. I can't just do like a side thing. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be everything. Give it my all to do it, which is why I got rid of like the editing business for other people, because I felt myself working for someone else again, and I don't want that feeling. That's why I left my job.
Good. Yeah, good.
I just focus on this, which is good. So what does the future hold for you? What do you want to see happen next? Where do you go from here?
I would love to see the generosity go coast to coast this coming year, at retail, and some of our retail partners that we've worked with expand within them. From coast to coast. That's what I would like to see the money that we're raising be significant and make significant changes in the lives of animals and breast cancer survivors and military families and anything else that we decide to start you know, working on. And we have a couple of other ideas as well, but I would love to see that grow. I have some new music that we've been trying to work on getting recorded. It has been getting recorded, but the process is so slow with everything else. I'd love to get those songs out. Our show in Vegas is doing really well. I would love to see that continue because I don't have to leave. I have 2 little kids, and I get to be home with them every night, and that's really awesome. But, you know, most importantly, I would love to see the T grow. I wanted, you know, my kids, they're 7 and 8, and they love Prime, right? And they never drink it. They never finish it. I mean, there's a reason for that. I'm not going to talk bad about anything, but they never finish it, but it's cool to have it, right? They walk around their school. I see them. We got Prime, boys. And that they did a great job of marketing that to these kids and to people. And I would love to see to get generosity and giving, showing people that you can give and it doesn't hurt. You're already going to spend the money on something to drink. It's so easy to give without even thinking about it. I would love to see it become mainstream and popular and somebody that really cared enough about it to go, oh my God, this is great. And then, and shared it. And these people shared it. And then it became, just like that kind of slogan. But, there's a lot of good behind it, and right now, it's just me right now. I do it myself, and we've gotten it into Walmart. I've gotten it into Walmart. I've gotten it into Kroger. I've gotten it into a bunch of places around the country and distributors. We have an Anheuser-Busch distributor in Vegas. And so it's growing, but I would love to see it become something that people can be proud of what they're drinking, not just because it's cool and one of these YouTubers says that it's cool, but it's cool because it's cool to give, without even thinking about it.
Is there a lot of sugar in it?
We haven't unsweetened. It's not out because unsweetened doesn't really sell as well as the others. So it's right on par with anything like Pure Leaf or Gold Peak or any of the other teas that are out. It's kind of the same.
Well, get me some cases and maybe I can help you get it more mainstream.
Oh, I'd love that. I'll send you some for sure. Yeah.
To me, like I look at like those types of partnerships not for monetary value. Yeah. It's more like, one, I like iced tea and I have like Woo Energy. These are my energy drinks here. And as long as it doesn't compete with another brand, like we don't have a water or iced tea or anything, like I'd love to have my guests on camera drinking it and we could promote the crap out of it. And help you get it out there. And any merch you have, you could send it to me too.
Awesome.
But yeah, I always go and every time I'm at like a gas station or something, I'll get an iced tea.
Oh, okay.
I'm a big iced tea drinker.
Well, I get you a hat, but you have way too nice of hair to be wearing a hat though.
I'll rock a hat. People send me hats all the time and I'm just not really a hat person. I used to be a hat person.
If I had hair like that, I wouldn't be a hat person.
Yeah, I used to be a hat person. I'll wear beanies. You guys have beanies?
We can make one. That's easy.
Yeah, but like it's like I'm growing my relationship with the Tyson Group and Ric Flair's energy group, like that. I have their logos here and their stuff, and that started just like this, these types of conversations and stuff. So anyway, I can help with that.
That'd be amazing. Like I said, I'd love to make a living off of it. I'm not trying to become the richest guy in the world. The whole idea behind generosity was to show retailers and brands, consumer products, consumer packaged goods that you can give a little bit of the money and it doesn't, it takes a little bit out of your profit margin, but you can give every single time, you drink something or eat something, and we could get rid of we could cure so many of the issues. Look, I mean, if Coca-Cola was giving 10 cents a bottle, to homelessness in America, or, I mean, we could literally, we could kill so many of the problems that we have in society here just by giving a little bit. But when it's with something that you already drink or eat, I didn't reinvent the wheel when it comes to iced tea. It's great tasting stuff. It's not some weird concoction, right? It's just as good as anything else, but it gives to charity. It's the same as everything else. It just gives to charity. That's the only difference. And so, I love that about it. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of that more than anything else that I've done.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What piece of advice would you give to someone, that's just getting out of prison or, struggling inside prison or just struggling in life in general, that's kind of hit a low point and is looking to find their passion, their purpose?
Yeah. I mentioned it earlier. I think don't ever be afraid to hear no. Never, ever be afraid to hear no. Your ego only holds you back in life. There's nothing wrong, whether it's, a woman that you want to take out and she says no. it doesn't hurt you. If there's a job that you want to go after, the only thing holding you back is your ego. You really can, nothing is out of your league. No person, nothing is out of your league. It's really all about mindset. The other thing is being kind to people, being good to people. It's so important. I have the best friends in the world. I believe that. My group of friends are amazing. I would not be sitting here if it wasn't for it. I put my money into my tea company and I made some from music, and then I've struggled because that's what happens when you start a business. But my friends have helped me through it all of them, and I love them dearly. So your support system, have a good support system. If you don't have a good support system, then you be your support system and start from there, start from the ground up and believe in yourself. Again, I had no education when I got out. The only thing I learned in prison, I got a degree in vocational janitorial so I could clean a toilet. Nothing wrong with that. If that was what I was going to do, if that's what I wanted to do, or if that's where I was going to start. I started in my first job was awful at an auto auction. And I had to clean out brains of cars that were smashed and rolled over, and it was just awful. But then I got into a warehouse, and I started working for a beverage company in a warehouse. And then I got on a truck driving it, and I made a little bit more money. Then I became a sales manager, then a manager, and then I was the national director of a beverage company, of a sales director. And now I have my own. And I believed in myself, and I had to fudge my way in a little bit and say, I knew a little bit more than what I did, or I was more qualified. But now there's really nothing that you can't learn on the internet. You want to do something, research it, read it, write it, believe it, breathe it, eat, sleep it, and you can do it. You're doing it every day. You can do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much, man, for coming out here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Leaving Vegas to come to the cold.
I love it. It's not that bad. It's about the same in Vegas right now. It's cold and windy, so it was a good time to get out.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate you. I'm glad we got to meet and do this, and we'll definitely, stay in touch, and I'm going to come see one of your shows.
You got to. Thanks, brother.